All right, welcome to the B Block Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Scott. I appreciate you for joining me here. We're doing a live show, and we're coming off the Texans' Thursday night football win over the Buffalo Bills. I was in the building. It's a really exciting game, really exciting way to win a game. And so there are a couple of things that come from the game that I want to talk about. But the theme of this show is how the Texans winning that game completely changes the conversation about the team. I think both, like from a mathematical standpoint, just what the difference between 6-5 and 5-6, specifically against a team that is also vying for a wild card spot. Like, I think there's just an objective mathematical implication there. But then the style of victory, the part that you kind of have to watch or be aware of to know about, is just how dominant the defense was in this game. The fact that the offense seems to be finding some things within it that I think are encouraging, got to be encouraging for, or at least should be encouraging for Texans fans. And so I want to talk about what this win does for the Texans, because I think it kind of makes it really plain. I think it makes the path forward for the Texans in terms of getting to the postseason is, at least for me, a lot clearer. And yeah, I feel like this game just provided a lot more clarity in that regard. So we'll talk about that. But I want to go over the game first. And I know it's been, nearly 24 hours since the game happened, but I've had time to digest it. Of course, I was there in person, and I've had a chance to watch it back as well. And this was impressive for a number of reasons. The fact that I would start with this. The fact that they were able to overcome so many things, whether it was self-inflicted or however you want to look at it, there were so many different things that happened in this game where you think back to if this happened earlier in the season, these don't feel like things that they could overcome. I talked about this on In the Loop earlier when I was on Sports Radio 610 with John Lopez and Reginald Atatula. I mentioned, man, and I think their theme at the time was like, Lopez's whole point was let's stop with the yeah buts. Let's stop with the qualifiers for why the Texans might win a game. Let's stop trying to parse through every single thing to be critical of the team to the point to where we're not giving them enough credit for what it is that they're actually doing. This game was evidence enough that you don't need all of those qualifiers when you talk about the Texans. You don't necessarily, they're fine for context, but you don't necessarily need them. And I took a little bit of a different yeah but approach when I got in there in terms of just how I viewed the yeah but. Like, the Texans themselves were the yeah but in this situation. They were the yeah but in this game. Like, man, your quarterback starts 1 for 9 or whatever it was Davis Mills was, right? He had a couple of those misses to Higgins and Schultz early in the game, where one of those where he hits the defensive back right in the numbers, underthrows the ball to Higgins. And you could also kind of point to Higgins as somebody who, maybe as he gets a little bit more experience and time in the league, maybe he stops on a dime a little bit earlier for that jump ball that Davis Mills underthrows. So, I mean, I don't want to just kill him for that, but he was missing some throws early, and the offense was not looking very impressive early on, in large part because he was missing throws and really for a number of reasons. But the yeah but comes in when Davis Mills is able to engineer 2 touchdown drives for you in the second quarter, and none more important and more impressive than the last one that you get to end the first half. So this is them overcoming themselves and winning in spite of adverse circumstances. Like, it didn't need to be perfect like it was against the Baltimore Ravens, or perfect like it was against the San Francisco 49ers. They didn't need it to be perfect for them to win the football game. And so that's the part that stood out to me. You go from Davis Mills starting off in that first quarter not looking very good to him looking pretty damn good in the second quarter and engineering those 2 touchdown drives. Like I mentioned, you go from being able to overcome really goofy and silly stuff that was happening in the first half, from that 45-yard James Cook run that you got. You go from that to and you also have the 97-yard kickoff return from Ray Davis. Like those were moments where earlier in the season you go, yep, that's the type of thing that's the type of shit that they do. That's the type of game that they lose. Those are the types of plays that they'll give up to sort of shoot themselves in the foot. And the yeah, but is, you know what? We still got life. We still got plays. We're going to just play the next play. And I was really impressed with how the Texans just kept playing the next play, even when goofy stuff would happen. And so that was the story of the first quarter. It was like, man, you know what? Not everything here is perfect, but they can win in spite of some things. Davis Mills, we talk about his poise and how calm he is. That's on display here when he's missing some throws and everything's not necessarily clicking like you want it to early on. But by the time you get to the second quarter and by the time they kind of get into a rhythm, he's just playing the next play. He's not really worried about the play before, whether it was good or bad. He's just playing the next play. So that was big. Also, them finding this one is actually really important to me because I've been talking about it since last week. Not that I've like uncovered something or like I've revealed something here, but I've thought now for a while, at least for a couple of weeks now, that this Jaden Higgins thing is gonna unlock something in this Texans offense. And I believe that. Like the Jaden Higgins emergence or development, however it is you want to look at it exactly, that is going to, I think at least, unlock some things in this. And I think it even already is. Like we're seeing it in real time, what it means when you've got a guy that can win in one-on-one coverage when the other guy is being shaded or double teamed or there's help over there, whatever the case may be. Like if the game plan is to take Nico Collins out of the game, they are now demonstrating that they got a guy on the team that can win one-on-one battles. And that I feel like has been an issue. I had DJ Bieniemy from ESPN on here talking before about how it's a little bit of mix of not having the explosion, but also the route concepts being a little bit primitive and not all that creative. Like that combination sort of has done the Texans passing game in at various points in this season of just being like rely on Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, and maybe some of you like your short and quick game, and hopefully you can make something shake and make a play. But it just hasn't been a whole lot there in terms of explosive plays or really even opportunities for a lot of explosive plays. And so, but I also thought a big reason for that is needing somebody that can make the opposing team pay for having to tend with the coverage dictator. Like, hey, this guy is dictating my coverage. He says that he's good enough to where it says I need to double up on this guy. All right, pick your poison. Like making them pick their poison when they decide to dictate coverage in that kind of way, that they're going to give extra attention to another guy. So, look, I know at various points people have been like, "Hey, man, get a ball to Nico, feed Nico, make sure Nico gets the ball." I'm right there with you. Like, I don't see no reason why you wouldn't throw the ball to Nico Collins, on any given play, right? Like, even sometimes when he's covered, he's not a bad option to throw the ball to. So, like, I actually don't hate it when they force feed him, but it's much more ideal when you don't have to force feed him if the other guy is creating some opportunities for you in the passing game. And so Jaden Higgins was somebody that really stood out to me on the offensive side of the ball. But look, I can't get this far and here, shout out to Senor Buble, or is it Buble? Check me on that. But or am I reading that right? Hey, let me know if I'm reading that right. But it says we got to put some respect on Kaylee name. We're gonna get to this in a second because look, I didn't feel like it was a like this great Nick Kaylee game or anything, but I do feel like a lot of the conversation that has happened after this game about the conservative play calling in the second half, the red zone play calling, all of that, I feel like has been terribly exaggerated and overdone from what I can tell from people that of course I like and love in some cases and are really close to. But I just happen to disagree on some of this stuff. But just kind of recognizing still real quick on the players that deserve to be recognized. Like Jaden Higgins just stood out to me and has stood out to me as somebody who is starting to figure it out and starting to become more of an option for the Texans than he was back when they was losing all them games early in the season and the offense was looking as bad as it was. So that's a new element. That's an unlocked piece of the offense that I think is important going forward when you talk about the Texans and what they are. So so there is that. And yes, I am going to get to the defense. I don't know if anybody's wondering if I'm going to talk about this incredible defense and what has shown itself to be, or like just I feel like there is no disputing that this is the number one defense in the league right now, and got a chance to really do some historic stuff and put itself like in the pantheon of some defenses. I feel like if the Texans do things that are noteworthy in the playoffs, like if they don't make the playoffs, certainly nobody's going to remember this defense. And if they're one and done or something like that, nobody's going to remember this defense. But I will talk about them in just a second. I thought Jaden Higgins was huge and is huge going forward for this offense. The fact that they were able to figure out ways to get Christian Kirk involved, despite the fact that he seems like he's not quite as explosive as he used to be, whether it's because of injuries or age or whatever the case may be. DJ Bieniemy, who I mentioned earlier from ESPN, was on the last episode kind of talking about that, how he wasn't really that big of a fan of the trade to begin with. I was much more of a fan of it at the time, but can I argue that up until last night, it had not looked that great. It was underwhelming at best and really just like a kind of a flop up until this point. And so shout out to them, and shout out to Christian Kirk for sticking with it, but also to them for figuring out ways to kind of get him open and get him involved in the offense. I joked on Twitter that this could be a Christian Kirk podium game. I don't think it was a podium game, but obviously he scored a touchdown. He had another big play that helped set you up for a score. And so like I thought that was a welcome, at least from my vantage point, a welcome sight that Christian Kirk, who everybody's crushing and wants off the team and doesn't understand why they went and got him and all of this stuff. And I get it. It's been underwhelming. It's been a disappointment. It wasn't one last night, and he helped you win a game. So, like, I thought that was really cool. The last thing on the offense before I switch over to the defense. Oh, no. That's not the last thing before I switch over. I also want to mention, in case I forget to get to it later, Xavier Hutchinson showing some like some intuitiveness, some creativity, if you will. If you didn't think that Nick Caley's play calling was creative enough for you, I dare you to say that Xavier Hutchinson realizing that play was dead to right, that he was dead to rights in that play and dead to water and just cutting it back to the other side and getting real shifty. Yeah, right. As we mentioned here, shifty Hutch. Like that was an important play. Like the fact that wasn't a negative play, like it looked like it was going to be, and he ended up getting positive yards for you was pretty big. And look, Hutchinson is easy to forget. Easy to forget in this mix because you got Nico, who's your star, and then you got these two young you got the two other Iowa State guys that are rookies that you just got higher hopes for, because Jalen Noel, they don't have really another player like him. And then Jaden Higgins is the higher pick, the more touted prospect. So out of the two guys, you're like, you're kind of more fixated on them. And then you paid Christian Kirk a lot of money and traded for him. And so Xavier Hutchinson is just kind of the late round pick who's just been around now for a few years. And then there he shows up for you in a couple of ways, and it's turned into a really reliable player. Not somebody that you necessarily feel comfortable being the number two guy. I know a lot of teams don't even really talk like that. After your number one guy, they don't start ranking them 2 through 6 per se. It's just a bunch of guys trying to get open and trying to take advantage if the main guy is getting that type of coverage. But yeah, I mean, Hutchinson is a complimentary piece, and a reliable complimentary piece is a feather in the cap. It is a major plus. So there was that. And then the offensive line. I want to get to that. Like, and I don't have a whole lot on the offensive line other than just to say, and I'm going to repeat something that I said on the radio earlier today. Let this be the last time that we have to have a conversation about who plays on the offensive line, barring injury, right? Somebody get hurt, and now we got to restart the conversation again. Where you move, who, where, and who plays where, and all of that. We got to do that if somebody gets hurt. But if the 5 guys who started on the line for them on Thursday night against the Bills are all healthy enough to play, that should be the offensive line. How did it go? From left to right. At left tackle, you had rookie Ariante Ursery. At left guard, the surprise, and maybe shouldn't have been a surprise move to me. I don't know. For whatever reason, I just keep thinking that they're going to leave Titus Howard at tackle. But I'm going to give them credit for this one because it worked out, and it looked like it's probably the best move that they're going to make in terms of the offensive line. Go from Ariante Ursery at left tackle to Titus Howard at left guard. Of course, Jake Andrews has been your center. That's like basically the one constant. Ed Ingram back healthy and fully healthy now at right guard. And the big old mountain Trent Brown at right tackle. And let's not forget Blake Fisher, your 6th offensive lineman, since they run that jumbo package and jumbo set so damn often. I feel like he's worth mentioning. That's the offensive line. Y'all tell me if y'all disagree. That's the offensive line. I feel pretty comfortable with that. And whether we talking about the run game, the pass game, look, Trent Brown doesn't move great, but man, it just helps that he's just so damn big and difficult to get around. It seems like he's moving just well enough to where, man, he's like, it's worth it just to have him in the run game. And if he can just not hurt you in the pass game, maybe it's a problem with more speed rushers. But look, that's the offensive line. That's it. Brandon saying that's why you build an O-line like you need 10 guys and not 5. It's a great point. That's a great point because, look, I don't know what took them so long to kind of finally figure out the right combination. And maybe some of it had to do with health and guys dropping. And, of course, Trent Brown wasn't available until very recently. But, like, they put their right tackle, who was playing fairly decently to pretty well at right tackle, put him at left guard after doing musical chairs at left guard with Laken Tomlinson and Juice Scruggs for most of the year. And then also a guy that we had never heard of. And then they played Jared Patterson there, somebody that we forgot was on the team. They've played like 4 left guards. And then the answer, the solution ended up just being to move their right tackle back to left guard once the injured new right tackle finally got healthy enough and ready to play. Got to mention here a big boy at right tackle should have been playing based on his size. Nah, he wasn't healthy. He had that torn patellar tendon that kept him out. He was like he wasn't really working with him in camp. Like, he was out there, but kind of working off to the side and just wasn't ready. I mean, even now, still looks like he might not be in the best football shape, but it helps that he plays a big boy position. But yeah, no, I don't think he was available to them earlier on. Brandon also mentioning that Caserio signing Ingram and Trent Brown may have saved the team. I think you can make a case for that, given how desperate of a situation it has been on the offensive line. and honestly continues to be on the offensive line. Like you need look, you need your offensive line playing on the string. You can't have no weak links on your offensive line. I don't think nobody on there has got to be an all pro, but you can't have no weak links. They're at a stage where they need all of the strong links that they can get. And Ingram, with some exceptions, has been pretty good for them. And Trent Brown has been a revelation as well. Okay. So I don't want to overlook the Ariante Ursery development. I think my guy Seth Payne on Sports Radio 610 does a really good job of making this point almost every week whenever they look at the match, whatever the matchup that the left tackle is going to have for that given week. Seth does a really good job of pointing out where Ariante Ursery has gotten better and even was doing a good job back when he was struggling of pointing out what he did well and where he also needed to improve. So the fact that Ariante Ursery is not unplayable the way it seemed like he was kind of early on. Like they had to stick with it and just let him fight through it. But there were some moments early on where it felt like, man, he's just not ready to play. He is now. Titus Howard, it turns out, your right tackle is better than anybody that you got signed for guard. Anybody that you got signed that's supposed to play guard, whether that's Lakin Tomlinson, who you brought in, or Juice Scruggs, Jared Patterson, who were already here, and then that other dude that, again, I had just, with all due respect, had never heard of. So that's cool. Got front runner mentioning this is on Trent Brown, I believe, that he gets beat a lot by speed rushers. Mills gets rid of the ball faster than CJ. You know, that is all factual. No arguments. He does get beat a lot by speed rushers, but it does also help that he's not trying to protect a quarterback that's patting the ball or hoping that another play develops that's not necessarily there or certainly isn't going to be there before somebody's able to get to him. That's a fair criticism, I think. I think in the ridiculous CJ Stroud versus Davis Mills conversation that I've tried to participate in, only at at a minimum. I've obviously discussed it because you can't really avoid it if you're doing a podcast and you're doing radio and stuff. Even if you think it's silly, you still got to like talk about it. But the only thing that I really had thought is valid is, I would say the most valid. I think a lot of some of the stuff is valid, at least in terms of criticism of CJ's game at times. I think sometimes we get lost a little bit in the things that he's done well and some of the things that he continues to do well in an effort to criticize his game. But the one thing that I would say about Davis Mills is it does seem to like he seems to make the decisions quicker and the throws quicker. Like I'll give him that. I'll give him that. He's just not as accurate. He's just not quite as dynamic as CJ Stroud is. And I feel like this criticism of Stroud is a fixable one, and is one that sometimes he actually is not. It's not a criticism. Sometimes he does get rid of the ball. Like some of his better games are ones where he's gotten rid of the ball quick, or where guys have gotten open early and things like that. Like, and then of course we love it when you see what looks like backyard ball and he's doing that scramble drill with Nico Collins. I mean, that was carrying him in the beginning of last year, right? The 2024 season. The CJ Stroud, Nico Collins scramble drill was the best play that the Texans had in their playbook. Whether it was in their playbook or not, it was the best play that they ran. You know? So there's that. The defense. Man, how did I get almost 25 minutes into this thing without shouting out that defense? And Brandon did make the point here about Trent Brown as one of the guys who's been real impressive one-on-one and moving massive defensive tackles. Yeah, they didn't have man movers. They didn't have dudes that moved other men, which is part of what I feel like you've got to do in almost any scheme, but certainly in this one. So, yeah, but the defense, really the story of the game. I think D'Amico Ryan said after the game that they gave the game ball to the offensive line, which I had no problem with. Obviously, I just talked about them and how I feel about that being the offensive line going forward. I'm good with them getting the game ball. Not that anybody asked me, but Will Anderson Jr. anybody? Kalen Bullock anybody? I mean, the Neil Hunter late anybody? The combination of like the others as one. If you go Derek Barnett, Sheldon Rankins, or Mario Edwards, Henry Toa, like that Derek Stingley Jr. had a pass breakup, and they just didn't really even want to mess with Derek Stingley Jr., which I don't blame him. Like, let's not even go that route. Kamari Lassiter, Aziz Al Shair. How about the linebackers on this team? I can remember a point where I felt like the linebackers might be a weakness and certainly not a like a like just for sure a strength. Nah, that's a strength of the team. You get linebacker play like what you're getting from Aziz Al Shair this year, you doing pretty damn good. You get Henry to come out there and look, I know he misses tackles a time or two, and there's been some plays that he didn't make that he'd like to have back, and certainly Texans fans like to have back. But man, you want to talk about playing with your hair on fire the way you really want a linebacker to play. Like Henry is about it, man. He is about it. And EJ Speed, like I'm not gonna say a revelation because I feel like we kind of were familiar with EJ Speed being a player in the division already, coming from the Colts. But yeah, man, they needed that. They needed that, and if those guys have outplayed what you thought was your best linebacker before, who clearly has been kind of played out of the equation, in Christian Harris, nah, that's dope. That is dope to me. So the defense, and look, the defense is the reason why. And I guess I'll finally get to this part. The defense is the reason why the quote unquote conservative play calling that everybody is complaining about. I'm not gonna say everybody, I don't want to overgeneralize, but that so many people are complaining about. The reason why it didn't bother me is because I was sitting up there watching how the defense was playing the whole time, and I imagine that the Texans coaches were as well. And so, with all due respect to everybody that is mad about the conservative play calling or the lack of offensive production in the second half, like with all due respect to y'all, like I don't feel like this is a necessary gripe. You're free to it. And the overall the overall point of they let their foot off the gas, I don't like that, is fair. Right. I think that's a matter of taste. How do you approach it? How would you approach it? Would you, if you got a lead at halftime against a team that's really good offensively, do you want to put your foot on the gas and try to score as many points as possible because you anticipate that you might be in a shootout whether you want to be or not? Or do you take a lead at halftime and then decide like, hey, I got the number one defense in football. I'm gonna try to hold on to this lead as opposed to doing too much, as they say. I think that's a matter of taste, preference, and argument. Valid arguments can be made either way for like as a general philosophy. Okay. So having said that, I do think specific to this game, the conservative play calling, quote unquote conservative play calling, because I do think there were some moments there in the game in the second half, because this is where we're talking about, right? When they got the lead and it's the second half and they're not really moving the ball that well, they're not scoring no points. And we're just like, what the hell? Where'd the offense go? It looked promising at the end of the first half. Where'd the offense go? But I I didn't. So look, I might even argue a little bit with with the case that it was as conservative as a lot of people are saying. It was more conservative than the first half for sure. But I didn't feel like it was just like I didn't feel like at any point it was super creative and ambitious and like they were like just taking shots. They took a couple shots in the first half, and Davis missed them, by the way. Missed some of them, by the way. Okay. Let's not forget how the game started. Did miss some of them, by the way. And I thought it was a fairly conservative play calling and game plan overall, which I was also in support of to begin with, because like whether you want to call it conservative or not, I was one of the ones out here stressing how important it was to run the football against this team. How important it was for especially a team that wants to be built around the identity that this team wants to be built around versus this team, this Bills team that has demonstrated it's not very good against the run. You need to run the football. You also need to keep away from Josh Allen. Now, this is before I realized that they were going to go out there and sack the man 8 times and turn him over as many times as they did, pick him off 2 times and cause fumbles and all of that type of shit. I wasn't even talking about that. I was talking about keeping the ball out of his hands to begin with and giving your defense a chance to like be as rested as reasonably possible when they go up against Josh Allen. That's what I thought the formula was the whole time. Run the football, keep it away from Josh Allen, and then when he get the ball, like that's the formula to beat him, right? Keep it out of his hands, and then when it get in his hands, take it back. And we do know he'll give you opportunities to take it back. He might even give you the ball, right? Or you might sack him a handful of times the way you did in this game because he likes to move around. That's the formula. That's how you beat him. So look, I did not have a big problem with the approach or the mentality. I had more of a problem with the result and the fact that they weren't able to execute those plays at a great level. And yeah, like I didn't like them not scoring points. I didn't love that. I do prefer you be a little bit more aggressive than they were, but I understand how they got there. Okay. I mean, we can even break it down. Okay. The first half ends with them responding to that kick return with a very, very impressive 2-minute drive, like roughly 2-minute drive, 2-minute drill type of situation to take the lead back, to go get it right back, right to end the half. And so they go into the half with a lead, 20-16 at that point, right? Won the game 23-19. I'm going off of memory there. Yeah, they won the game 20 to, so it was 20-16 at halftime. How does the first half even start? Do y'all remember how it started? I'm gonna pull it up just so I'm not misremembering or calling it incorrectly. But if you remember correctly, the Bills get the ball back or get the ball to start the second half. And what did the Texans do to that Bills offense to start that second half? In fact, we don't even have to go slow like that. We can kind of just speed this up a little bit and look at how those first few drives went for the Bills to start the second half. All the while the Texans not doing nothing offensively, what are the Bills doing? And again, mind you, they get the ball first. What was going on with the Bills in the second half? Do y'all remember? 5 plays, punt. Why did they punt? Will Anderson Jr. with the 18-yard sack. Okay. Next drive, 3 and out, punt. Right. So you're basically trading punts and 3 and outs with the Bills throughout the fourth quarter for the most part until the end when you get the fumble. But why did they punt the second time? Danielle Hunter sack. He finally gets involved in the game. with a sack to basically stall their drive, if I'm remembering that correctly. If I'm looking back just to make sure, that is when you get. Oh damn! I was looking at the Texans drive. That's exactly what happened. Daniil Hunter sack to end the drive. Okay, so now to start the third quarter, you have now they've run 8 plays in 2 drives, and you've killed them both by sacking the quarterback with your top edge rushers and two of the best in the game. Two of the hottest players, defensive players right now in the game. The way that Neil Hunter's been playing lately, and certainly the way Will Anderson played in that game. You telling me that does not inform your play calling? Oh, by the way, you're playing with a lead. You're telling me that Will Anderson Jr. and the Neil Hunter sacks to kill drives don't inform your play calling with a lead? Don't inform your play calling, even just a little bit? Come on now. If you're watching that, if you're watching them do that, that tells you, like, that's more information. That tells you something different than what you knew necessarily in the first half when all that goofy shit was happening. When Ray Davis is running 97-yard kick returns and James Cook is getting loose for a 40-something yard touchdown. Okay, but those things happen. But look, other than that, the defense got a beat on this thing. Okay. So those are the defensive drives to start the third quarter. How did the Texans start the third quarter with their first offensive drive? Do y'all remember? Pass short to left to Nick Chubb for 8 yards. All right. How does that drive actually end up going? It's stalled by penalties. You get a holding penalty. You're talking about 2nd and 26. I think Woody Marks picks up at least 10 for you to make third down at least more reasonable and manageable for you. But the third down play doesn't work, and it's conservative. You're back, you're back in your own, pretty deep enough in your own territory. So a conservative play call on 3rd and 16 after you've had a couple of penalties to derail the drive, a conservative play call on 3rd and 16 in your own territory with the lead, and your defense having just sacked the quarterback on an 18-yard sack, by the way. So the quarterback is showing you that he's going to do some goofy stuff, maybe run all the way in the backfield, 18 yards deep, as Will Anderson Jr. is chasing him and decide not to throw the football away. Like, that's what you're dealing with. You just saw that. Yeah, it's 3rd and 16. I'm in my own territory. I had a couple of penalties. After I had a couple of plays within a stretch where I had a couple of plays that worked. Punt. It's cool, right? And so, like, that didn't bother me. The next drive. I want to make sure I'm doing this right. You get a 3-yard run, you get a 5-yard run. It's 3rd and 2. What happens there after that? So you run Woody Marks on the first, and look, I get it. I feel like they ran like 6 straight runs over the course of 2 drives, maybe more than that. But you get 3 yards from Woody, 5 yards from Woody. Woody gets hurt. It's 3rd and 2 now because Woody's got you 3 and 5 on 2 carries, respectively. And then Woody gets hurt on the play. They bring in Nick Chubb, 3rd and 2. They go nowhere past the line of scrimmage. All right, it's 4th down. It's 4th down. Time to punt. I don't love the conservative play calling, but if you get 3 and 5 from your running back on the first 2 downs, I got a tough time arguing with that when I spent the whole damn week talking about how running the football against this terrible run defense was going to be key. And here you are doing it with a lead. How I'm going to complain about that? How I'm going to be mad about that? And then when it don't work, be like, oh man, you should have been throwing the ball. Why are you not being more aggressive? You got Davis Mills back there. Like, what are we doing? Like, why do we have to be so drastic? We can give Davis Mills his credit and be glad that Davis Mills was able to engineer those touchdown drives in the second quarter. And I'm sitting up here giving him credit for his poise and his toughness. I think it's really impressive. I think that's the exact type of makeup and characteristics that you want from your quarterback from a leadership position like that. I'm here to get a man credit. I'm not here to go overboard and be like, man, they should have really let him loose in the second half. He should have been throwing it all over. Why they wasn't more aggressive? Man, because he's still the backup quarterback who started the game off kind of shaky, kept his head, and look over there at that defense that's helping him out. That's sacking that's on Josh Allen's ass. Literally. What was that sack in the early in the game where Will Anderson Jr. comes from behind and sacks him and he hurts his wrist or hurts his hand or whatever it was. Right? Like they're on his ass. So I know a lot of folks were mad at the play calling, thought it was too conservative, thought they didn't really put their foot on the gas or their foot on their neck and really try to win and all of that. But just it didn't. And Brandon says, let me go to front runner first. There's too many field goals keeps the other team in the game. I get it, but if we're just talking about the second half when the play calling got conservative, how many field goals did they get? How many field goals did they kick? One? Like people are losing sight of like what the score actually was in the second half. It was 3-3. If I'm not mistaken. 3-3. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It's 3-3. Like I struggle to be mad at the fact that what they did in the first half turned out to be enough. I'm all for that. I'm all for doing your work early. And if 2 touchdowns and 3 field goals is enough, turns out actually 2 touchdowns and the 2 field goals were enough. That extra field goal was just for good measure, it turns out. Like the one field goal that the Bills got in the second half wouldn't have even been enough to win the game. And I know they could have won it there at the end. But what happened? That defense showed up again. Interception. You telling me they're not noticing how good that defense is playing throughout the game? Brandon mentions that there's no excuse for passing less in the second half when the Bills lost all their DBs. The only excuse would be the fact that they can't really stop the run worth a damn, that they're not that great against the run. And also that just as much for all the credit that you got to give Davis Mills for the drives that where he's able to engineer those touchdown drives, as front runner points out earlier, Mills missed a lot of throws that CJ would have made. And I'm not trying to take anything away from him. But you can have confidence in your backup quarterback without like overdoing it and start like looking at him like he's CJ or like he's the number one quarterback or like he's playing better than he actually is. I'm not here for that. I don't want to do that. Got to target their weakness, their stated weakness going into the game. And Brandon mentions this that you got to target their weaknesses. Their weaknesses is their run defense. I know the DBs were out, but the weaknesses with their run. And again, I was gonna get to this, but they threw that out to Jaden Higgins in the fourth quarter. Nobody talks about it. They come out slinging on one of those drives in the fourth quarter. I'm trying to remember. First play, Jaden Higgins for 16 or something like that. It's not like they didn't throw the ball. They just recognized the situation. Okay. And I think it's important again that the Bills got the ball first. Okay. And yeah, I know I just went over this, but the Bills got the ball first and they sacked Josh Allen. Okay. You get the ball, and yeah, you can say the play calling was conservative, but the drive didn't work, not because the play calling was conservative. The drive didn't work because you had penalties. And you telling me penalties don't inform your play calling? Oh man, if I'm Nick Caley, oh man, are we doing this again? Is this what we on again? We're getting penalized. We're not playing clean now. You don't forget that the next time you call plays. You don't necessarily be like, oh man, we getting penalties now. Now I can't. But you remember that. Oh, we getting penalties now? Let's do it. Let's keep it simple. It's not overcomplicated. I don't know, man. So that didn't I was good with the fact that they did their work early. The Bills were a Gabe Davis completion away from the offense not doing enough. I can't argue with that. I'm not saying that what the offense did was like you should be happy with the actual production of it. Like, how different does it look if they don't get those penalties on the first drive? Do they go down there and score? I'm talking about the first drive of the third quarter. Do they go down there and score? If Jalen Noel is able to shake loose a little bit, and that was just a good play by the DB. But on that third, there was like a 3rd and 6 where they hit Jalen Noel for 4, short of the sticks. Conservative play call. But you're giving him the ball because he's somebody that you feel like can make a guy miss, right? If he does that, is that a bad play call? You know what I mean? And then I will point this out too. They scored 23 points, okay? They had 20 in the first half, 3 in the second half. It was a 3-3 tie. Basically, the second half was the second half we could have really actually done without, it turns out. Didn't need to play it. It was a wash. The game was decided in the first half. All right. But the final score for the Texans is 23. All right. Do y'all realize what 23 points can get the Texans in this season? Do y'all realize how far 23 points goes for the Texans this season? If you don't, and it's easy to look up, but I looked it up before I went live, before I started this show. And it turns out that the only game, okay, so the Texans are 6-5 now, right? So they've played 11 games, they've lost 5 games. The only one of those 5 games that the Texans lost where 23 points would not have been good enough for them to win was that Monday night game against the Seattle Seahawks. The only other game where 23 points would not have been enough for the Texans to win was one where they happened to score 36 anyway. Think that is that the Jacksonville game I'm thinking about? Which game is that I'm thinking about even? Yeah, that's Jacksonville. Where Mills goes out there and leads you to 36, get you to the game-winning touchdown run that nobody's gonna ever forget. I feel like, especially if they do something this year. But the only time where you've needed more than 23 points, or 23 points, I should say. The only time when 23 points would not have been good enough for you and you lost the game was against the Seattle Seahawks. So maybe better put, if you scored 23 points in every game that you lost this year, just at least 23 points, all right? In the 14 against if you scored 23 to go up against the 14 that the Rams scored against you to start the year, if you scored 23 to combat the 20 that the Buccaneers scored against you on Monday Night Football in the home opener, if you scored 23 points against the 17 that the Jaguars beat you with to send you down to 0-3, all right, if you score 23 against the 18 that the Broncos scored against you just a couple of weeks ago to beat you, you scored 23 points in those games, you're 10-1 right now. So you scored an amount that would have been good enough to win damn near any game that you've played all year, except one, basically. The other one we don't have to include because you scored 36, right? The 23 wouldn't have been enough to beat the Jaguars the second time, but you scored 36. You was on one. 23 good enough to win pretty much any game, and you mad about it. Come on, folks. Take your wins where you can take them. Don't be so damn strict. You can look, offense, I don't think it was good enough. The penalties wasn't good enough. The play calling leaves a lot to be desired. Not really all that imaginative for the most part. Not all that creative. Again, DJ Bieniemy on here earlier in the week talking about how some of the routes are just real basic. Not a whole lot going on in this passing game. All fair critiques. But running the ball on 3rd and 16 after you penalized your way to 3rd and 16, not mad at that. Can't be. I do want to point out, since I said that the season has changed, I don't think I've made this point yet, and we're almost an hour into this stream. And appreciate everybody that's checked us out. I should mention, because I don't think I did this, that since this is a live YouTube, you can also check us out on the audio, in the audio platforms, wherever it is that you actually get your podcast. That is actually rolling here on the screen, on the bottom of the screen. So you've probably already seen that, but you can subscribe to the B Block Podcast in audio form, wherever it is that you get us. I appreciate y'all for being here live. I guess before I move on, let me get, let's see, Beefster says, thank goodness for the offense we had. Great job, Mills. Welcome back, CJ. Love you, B Scott, a 610 listener, man. If we can convert as many of the people that rock with me on 610 to come over here to the B Block Podcast, that'd be great. Beefster, tell anybody else that that listens to 610 that might like me that we're doing this as well. So I appreciate you for dropping in. Brandon, this is a good back and forth between two Brandons, man. I like your name. Good job by your people there. But says, yeah, but when they stack the box and don't have DBs, that's when the OC needs to make an adjustment and capitalize. Look, it wasn't a great Nick Caley game. I think you got a good case there. They need to make the adjustment and capitalize. They could have been more aggressive. I understand why they weren't, given how the defense was playing. Defense not sacking Josh Allen and eating his lunch the way that they were. I'm hearing you. But within the flow of the game, as the game was going on, I didn't have a huge problem with what I was seeing. Now, let's get to this about how the Texans changed their season, okay? Because this is like just straight up math now, right? They got 6 games left. 6 games left. And there is a clear path, to me, a clear path to the playoffs for the Texans, okay? Worth mentioning here that the Texans, okay, I mentioned this on the last on an episode last week that the Texans were going into this game according to the Athletics playoff simulator. Okay, they do a simulator that basically spits out your playoff chances on a given week, right? So a week to week playoff chances. Going into this game, they had, according to the Athletics playoff simulator, a 23% chance of making the playoffs. 23% chance. After winning this game now, they are at a 35% chance to make the playoffs. So winning the game increased their chances of making the playoffs, according to the Athletics playoff simulator, by 12 percentage points. Okay. That's important. Now that that has happened, okay. And I just want to say before I break that down that for me going in, the big question and the thing that was really kind of hard to believe in was like, all right, we got these 3 wild card spots, and it looked like we got 6 teams that's competing for them, right? And I'm not looking at the standings. I'm just going off the top of my head. You had the Chargers, you had the Bills, then you had the Jaguars, Texans, Chiefs, and then whoever is left standing that doesn't win the AFC North is going to be in this conversation. Right now, that's the Ravens, but it could be that team could end up being Pittsburgh at some point. Who knows? All right, but whoever is like the odd man out of the North is going to be somewhere in this conversation as well. All right, so between those 6 teams, let's make Baltimore and Pittsburgh one team just for the sake of it. All right. Between those, where do the Texans fall in? That was the thing I was having a tough time answering, right? Like, cause like the boogeymen, the former boogeymen of the AFC were all in that conversation, right? Chiefs, Ravens, Bills, all in that conversation. Okay. Well, they beat the Ravens already. That's good. I don't give a damn about them not being healthy. They beat the Ravens already, so they got one up on them. They better than the Chiefs. They'll play them. So we get to find that out pretty soon. Better than the Bills. Did you feel great about saying that? Like, even if you picked them to win this game, do you feel great about saying that? The Bills' record is better. Their track record is better. Do you feel great about that? I didn't have them over the Bills until they beat them. So there's 2 teams where you probably trust them more. The Chiefs, the Bills, and hell, even though you beat the Ravens, probably trust them more too, right? Even though you probably like your head to head against the Steelers, might trust them more too with Aaron Rodgers and how that's looked at various points. So like you're in that class with Jacksonville and the Chargers, who you feel good against, but you split with Jacksonville. Chargers got a better record than you. Like it seemed like at various points at each team that you're competing with could make a case of being better than you or at least just as good as you. There was nothing about them up until this point, up until last night's game, that was really having the Texans stand out amongst the crowd. Now they do. And now they do in impressive fashion. It's not just important that you win the game. It was obviously important from a mathematical standpoint that they went to 6-5 instead of 5-6. But in the fashion, with the blueprint that they showed, that if Davis Mills can get you 23 and your defense can hold them under 20, what can you do when you have your starting quarterback out there? What is the potential? What could that game have looked like if you had been whole? What does the future look like now that you know that your offense has made has taken some of these steps that we're talking about? Woody Marks emerging as your top back. Nick Chubb, just a fine secondary complimentary back. Jaden Higgins emerging as a viable second option, and sometimes maybe even a first one if the coverage dictates it. What does that look like now for CJ Stroud 3 games later, however many games later now? And you do that, okay? So you change the conversation a little bit. Offense not as desperate as it seemed like it was when CJ Stroud first went down. Some things have kind of that offensive line figured that out a little bit. Things have started to emerge a little bit. And now we get to start talking about these playoff odds and these playoff chances. And what does it actually look like? I think that there's a clear path. I think there's a clear and obvious path here for the Texans. And this is what it comes down to. All right. This is what it comes down to. Essentially, okay. I want y'all to listen. This might be the most important thing that I say when we start talking about uh how things play out for the Texans. Essentially, in a nutshell, they need to look. This has been okay. If you're going to take for granted that they're going to beat the Cardinals and the Raiders, right? Are we all in agreement there? Like, I don't want to take any opponents for granted. Certainly, they could lose to either one of those teams. Okay, but look, if we're operating under the assumption that this team is equipped and is going to beat the Raiders and the Cardinals, okay, they essentially need to split the 4 games against the Colts, Chiefs, and Chargers. They got 2 games against the Colts, a game against the Chiefs, a game against the Chargers. They can split those however they want, as long as they split them. And at the very least, split them. Okay. Now, I think it's pretty obvious here that losing 3 games, like you need to go 4-2. Okay. Losing any combination of 3 games hurts your playoff chance. Any combination of 3 games hurts your playoff. 3-3 is not good. All right. 3-3 to finish this season is not good. You lose any combination of 3 games. I don't care who it's to. That's not good. But assuming you go, that you can go 4-2, right? You need to go 4-2. Let's just start off there. Split with the Colts, split with the Chiefs, beat the Cardinals and Raiders. Your playoff chances, and I can do this in real time here, according to let's do this. Let's say you split with the Colts. Say they beat the Colts, or let's say they lose to the Colts and lose to the Chiefs these next couple of weeks. They could lose to the Colts, lose to the Chiefs. Now they'd have to win out for the rest of the way. But if they did that, they still have an 82% chance of making the playoffs. And any combination, right? Any combination of splitting with the Colts and the Chiefs is going to land you, like I'm doing this in real time. Really cool interactive that they got here. But let's say that you lose both games to the Colts, but you win every game in between. So you beat the Chiefs, beat the Chargers, handle business against the Cardinals and the Raiders. Playoff chances, according to the Athletics Playoff Simulator, are at 89%. Lose both of these games. The Colts games are actually the most useless games to you because your chances of winning the division are far less likely. And so, like, you could make the case that out of the hard games, the most valuable games are the ones against the teams that are also in the wild card mix with you, that being the Chiefs and the Chargers. You beat the Chiefs and the Chargers, you can lose to the Colts. Now, if you lose to the Chiefs and the Chargers, right? Okay, let's do this again. If you lose to the Chiefs and the Chargers, now all of a sudden you need those Colts games. But it does drop your playoff percentages down to 69%. So the basically the worst combination of games to lose going forward, to simplify this whole thing, the worst combination of games to lose is the Chiefs and the Chargers. You need at least one of those, and preferably both of them. Now, another thing that you could do, the easiest path, since the least relevant teams that you're playing to end the season are the Cardinals and the Raiders. Okay. So let's do this. If you just beat the good teams and lose to the Cardinals and the Raiders, which I don't think there's an excuse for, okay, you should beat those teams, just to be clear. But if you go out there and handle business against the Colts, the Chiefs, and the Chargers and the Colts, and you lose to the Cardinals and the Raiders for some reason, the Athletics Playoff Simulator has you with a 98% chance of making the playoffs. Now, that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Why would you lose to the Chargers and the Raiders? I'm just saying mathematically that if you handle business against the Colts, Chiefs, Chargers, and Colts again, you can afford that loss. That is just what the math dictates and how these playoff simulators work. The least valuable games are against the Cardinals and Raiders. Those are the ones that you're expecting to win. The most valuable games are against the Chiefs and the Chargers, ones that are challenging and on the road. And in between there are the Colts. So that's how it shakes out. And I can drop this playoff simulator in the chat, actually. So y'all can see exactly what I'm looking at and what I'm talking about here. This is the Athletics. And if you don't have a subscription, sorry about that. But I'm going to drop it in there anyway, just in case. The Athletics Playoff Simulator. And if you're listening on the audio only platform, there is motivation for you to come over to the live stream sometimes and check us out. Dropping that in the chat right now. Ooh, did that link cut off? Looks like that link cut off. I'm gonna drop it one more time. Yeah. So that's what I'm going in. Y'all can kind of manipulate that yourselves. Like I didn't like, come up with this on my own. I saw that the Athletic has this playoff simulator. I'm like, oh, this is useful. These are smart people who do this. Last week the chances were at 23%. According to my notes, that's what I had in my show notes last week. 23% chance of making the playoffs. That increased with this win to 35%. Handle business, man. Beat the good teams. Beat the good teams. Really, to hell with the Raiders and the Cardinals, honestly. But you ain't got no reason to lose to them. There's just no excuse for that. But beat the good teams. Beat the Chiefs and the Chargers, right? That to me is the way. Beat the Chiefs and the Chargers because those are the most valuable games. Split with the damn Colts. Fine. Hell, at that point, you can lose one of them games against the Cardinals and the Raiders that you don't have no business losing. Nah, let me not say that. Don't lose no games to the Cardinals or the Raiders. Don't lose no game because 3 losses, going 500 makes things really difficult. Don't do that. Don't do that. And don't let it be because you lost to the Cardinals or the Raiders. Get swept by the Colts, got to beat everybody else. So that's where we are. That is to me why they have changed their season. For those reasons that we just laid out. Look, man, this was really fun. I went over an hour. Didn't think I was gonna go this long. I really actually need to get off my ass because I'm supposed to be at Toyota Center, and Lord knows it's gonna take me forever to get there. So look, man, I appreciate y'all. This was fun. check us out. We're gonna do more of these, man. I didn't even really get to no Rocket stuff. Didn't really have time to do that. But they got the Nuggets tonight. I'm gonna be in the building. Looks like I'm gonna probably be late because I sat here and talked to y'all for all of this time. But I'm headed up there anyway. See what they got, man. This is the biggest game that I feel like they've played since the first one, right? Since they played OKC to start the season. That was it's still to this day one of the best games that's been played in the entire NBA season so far. I got a feeling that Nuggets Rockets NBA Cup has that same sort of potential. You could get the same sort of vibes that this could be one of the, when we get to the end of it, one of the games that we really, really remember. So yeah, man. Appreciate y'all for being in here, man. Keep coming back. I'll keep doing them, man. If y'all come through and show some love, kind of keep the chat going, keep the show going. I look forward to doing more of it, man. So I appreciate everybody that was involved. I am Brandon Scott. This is the B Block Podcast. It is also a Foolish Club Media production. Until next time, y'all be good, man.